We wrap every week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, by giving you the floor. These are your hottest takes. You got something to say. You're all fired up. Well, send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com or leave us a comment on YouTube. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Rebecca writes in and says, she says, okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alberta government, for telling me what's appropriate for my children to read. Without your gross overreach, my children and I may have made decisions with our own brains to read books that, appeal to us, inform us, challenge us, teach us. Fortunately, with the UCP's overreach, we'll be safe in our little bubble of if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Thank you again so much. That from Rebecca in Spruce Grove. What about this one from Brandon, who says, okay, so here's my idea. The education minister has his undies in a knot because of graphic descriptions or depictions of sexual acts. Well, what about instead of banning the books that all the libraries, why don't they just grab a big, thick, phallic Sharpie and color over the specific? I don't know why you had to include phallic in there, but it sort of helped hammer down the point, didn't it? I don't get to say phallic every day, so I appreciate that from Brandon. What is it? What do they say about Biden? Thanks, Brandon. Is that the one? Anyway, he says, why not just color over and censor the specific images in question? Problem solved. He says, but not really, because we all know that these books are not being banned because of the sexual depictions, but because they have LGBT themes. Brandon says, this is absolutely pathetic. That from Brandon. How about this one from BDP, who listened to our episode on the 31st of July with Mary Jane and Kristen talking about the Hockey Canada verdict. BDP says, real talk, I have been having these conversations with my male friends who have daughters. Many of them are now teenagers or in their early 20s. He says, I'm seriously trying, much like you, Jespo, but with less success, I'm sure, to have these uncomfortable conversations with the boys, with the fellas. And I hope that permits me to say that I'm putting in the work, even if I'm not helping to produce the results that we all want. BDP says, I may not like your show, Ryan, or everything I hear on it, but I've always supported the need for it to exist and be heard. Says I can always change the channel if I wish to, but on the 31st of July, I'm glad I didn't. BDP says, so for all the times I may come across as negative toward the show or topics, this one I obviously cannot and will not. You're putting in the work, and I see it plain as day, and that deserves applause from us all. I will say this, BDP, I don't care whether you agree or disagree with me. The fact that you engage with the show means the world to us. We also heard from Alberta Gengar following that episode, who says your July 31st discussion about the Hockey Canada verdict with Mary Jane James, Kristen Rayworth, broke my heart and made me incredibly fucking angry. She says, regarding budget cuts targeting the sexual assault center of Edmonton, what is wrong with this provincial government? What is wrong with the premier and cabinet? These actions are going to harm society. We're going back to like the 1950s with the lack of education on sex ed and relationships. How about this one from Rob in Jasper? Had a very special edition of the show on the 24th of July, marking 1 year since, talking to almost 10 different stakeholders. Rob says, Johnny, you're going to love this one, opens his email by saying, Jespo, any man that would dare call political staffers chimpanzees is somebody I need to know. Incidentally, he says, incidentally, that's an insult to chimpanzees everywhere. I immediately was like, well, we're reading Rob's email on the show. Rob says, Rob here in Jasper, all is reasonably well for me, at least considering our situation. My place survived and I didn't get shot for looting. He says, I live in Stone Mountain on the far west edge of town. Maximum effort went into saving our places. He says the fire jumped over and around our buildings before destroying the west end. He says, I'm a cab driver and I saw firsthand the heroism of our frontline troops. All other cabbies abandoned their vehicles and ran for it, and I don't blame them. He says the merit of all our crews and responders is beyond reproach. They were asked for the impossible. Not one man or woman turned us down. They risked everything for our town. He says I stopped in at the fire hall at 11:30 on the big night to see if there was anything I could do. I stood there for like 30 seconds to take it all in. He says it was like right out of a Bruce Willis movie. By the way, shout out to Bruce Willis. Oh man, it's tough to watch that guy's scenario right now. His family says, this is Jespo, not Rob, back to his email in a second. His family says he doesn't even remember that he was a famous actor.
I know.
Says he can't even figure out why paparazzi's following him around.
Very
so sad to
very
see.
sad.
Oh man, let's support Alzheimer's research. Back to Rob in Jasper. He says it was like a Bruce Willis movie. My neighbor whose Lieutenant Ashley Chorley was barking out orders. All of this with her 2-month-old baby having been evacuated to Valemont. He says, I'm so proud to call these men and women friends. These are memories I will take to my grave. Says it brings up an old joke. How do you know there's a Jasperite in the bar? They'll tell you. He says, I'll now be the first to stand up and announce that I'm from Jasper and I defend these men and women. He says, but to the events of 2 weeks ago, an outside anti-conservative consultant was hired for a 1-year review of the fire. They interviewed our crews and they came up with an accusatory finger-pointing report at Madam Premier for the fire. He says, rightfully, Danielle Smith demands an apology for this report, which makes all of us in Jasper look like bigoted, hateful, intolerant liberals. Rob says, I want Danielle Smith to know she has friends and supporters here in J-Town and to not forsake us over the actions of a few. Our fire crews are not allowed to speak out over this. I have no such restrictions. He says, I will point out, not all liberals, hashtag not all liberals, are of this ilk. There are just some who are patriotic and proud as any conservative, some of whom are friends and relatives of mine. That from Rob, sending a message to the Premier through this show. Not the first time, not the last. And this one from R.A., who says, Alberta, starting with the Premier's office, needs to cancel the appearance of Trump sycophant and Christian singer Sean Fucht. I hadn't heard of him before all this controversy. All this is doing, trying to ban him from everywhere. By the way, this is Jespo talking, back to RA in a second. All it's doing is helping him. All it's doing 100%. Is getting more people to Google him, more people to listen to his music, more people to check out his social media. Regardless, RA says we need to cancel his appearance at the Alberta Legislature grounds. It is not appropriate to be holding a spiritual revival meeting on government property. This guy supports and promotes the idea of theocracy based on the idea that Christians are better than everybody else, making it doubly inappropriate for him to be at a government venue. Jespo here, every faith group thinks that they're destined for something better than everybody else. Back to the email. Religion and politics shouldn't mix, and that's partly to protect the church from being corrupted by power seekers. And this guy is in that category. If you look at the wealth he's amassing for himself while declaring he's not receiving contributions and the people he's choosing to cozy up to, are you kidding me? Do the right thing, says R.A., and cancel his appearance. Every single flamethrower is a real email or YouTube comment. Submit it to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can find us on Spotify too, and it all happens with the incredible support of the DQs in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you stop in for Johnny, they've got Superman blizzards. When you stop in for a Superman blizzard, woo! This weekend in a flamethrower signature stack burger, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. We're going to be taking Monday off. Enjoy your August long. We're back at it Tuesday morning. We will see you next Tuesday.